brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, so morning everyone. I think I know most people on the call, but if you don't know me, my name is Mel Louisu and I'm from Fish Climb Trees. So the topic for this morning's roundtable is leadership in a hybrid world. And obviously this is a new area, a new topic. So as you can imagine, there's not much research data out there, benchmarking, best practice. So if it's okay with everyone, the format's going to be a little bit different. There is no PowerPoint presentation, but we're going to run it almost as a bit of a pub quiz, really. So I'm going to put a couple of questions up on polls, and then hopefully that will prompt some discussion about the topic, so that we can really, it's about learning from each other as well as what is out there. So I'm guessing it will be no surprise for any of you to learn that Ernst & Young did a work reimagined survey at the beginning of this year, and they had 16,000 respondents across 23 different countries, and of those respondents, 90% said that they wanted, going forward, some flexibility in their role. So either where they're working from or the hours that they worked. Now, I'm guessing that that is no surprise to anybody in the room. That's why you're on this call. But they also asked the following question, which is, of the respondents, what percentage said that they would be willing to leave their job if they didn't get some sort of flexibility? So let me launch this poll and we'll see what you think the response was. Hopefully everyone can see that poll. Can somebody give it? Yeah, brilliant. I can see the answers coming in. Okay. Oh, nearly everyone's cast their votes. Okay, just waiting for one more person. I think we can probably say that's everybody cast their votes. And this is the result. So 25% of you thought it was 36%, 42% of you thought it was 48%, and 33% thought it was 54%. The actual answer is 54%. So if we think about that and we think about the challenges that we're all having, I know with my clients, everyone is having challenges recruiting good people. Really understanding how we can best lead in this brave new world is really, really important, because we need to retain our staff, and leadership is one of the best ways that we can do that. So I'm glad you're here, and hopefully we can have a really interesting and useful discussion. So hybrid means different things to different people. So if you're able to, I'd just like you to jot down in the chat box, what does hybrid working mean in your organization currently? So if you could just jot down in chat box what it means for you at the moment. Okay. Okay, so there's a real mix there. It's all very similar, sort of a mix of working at home and in the office, doing what you want. I love that. taking Fridays off, that is a really interesting one. Working from home but needing to support 24/7, so not everyone can do it in full time. There's a real mix, and I suppose that's one lesson for us as leaders. And I know with the universities that I'm working with, some of them, the senior management team of the university have been quite prescriptive about how they see it working, but a lot have just given a very open framework. So actually, for those of us that are running a department or a team, that can be quite difficult. And what does it mean? And I think that this is one of the emerging themes that is coming out of everything that I've seen in terms of the research and articles out there, is that actually we need to be clear about what hybrid working means for us. So does it mean 2 days in the office and 3 days from home? I'm quite sad. We had some friends over for dinner at the weekend, and unbelievably, we started talking about hybrid working and what it meant. And interestingly, there were some different perspectives around the room. One of my friends, I worked with him many years ago in a university, and he's been in private sector, public sector. He now works for the civil service, and he's got a really challenging situation at the moment with somebody that moved to York during lockdown and is now basically refusing to come into the office, making it very difficult, moaning about the travel time, the cost, and yet that was his decision. So that was one of the challenges. Then we were talking about the American banks, and somebody said that they're in full time. The American banks have taken the approach that actually your contract was to be 5 days in the office. We want you in 5 days in the office, and if you're not, then we need to part company. But we also talked about the nuances around people actually saying, well, I don't want to come into the office because I'm due to go on holiday. So I want to minimize the risk of me contracting COVID, which means I can't go on holiday. And we were talking about the fact that actually that's quite a reasonable request. And as leaders, we need to look after the well-being of our teams, and going on holiday is probably really important. So where does that fit in it? So I think that actually being very clear about what hybrid working means is a good leadership tool, because it stops us tripping up, and every time there's a different situation, we apply different rules to different people, because I think it's about clarity. And also I think that there needs to be an understanding. I've had several conversations with people around the fact that actually hybrid working is a gift. So I know some teams, they've put a rota in place, and that rota has caused concern because some people are having to work on a Friday. But actually hybrid working only means you're either in the office or you're at home. You haven't got a day off. So again, I think it is about being very clear, and also giving that message that for those people that are fortunate enough to have hybrid working, it is a gift and it is theirs to lose. So that there's some flexibility around here, and it's around, at the moment, I see a lot of people talking about hybrid working from their own personal perspective. So it suits me to work at home, that's why I want to do it. But actually we need to turn this on its head, especially in the work that QBO members do. You know, we are there for our students. So actually, what do our students need from us? And not the bare minimum service, but actually what is the best level of service that we can give them. But also as well, and this was another perspective that I hadn't really thought about before Saturday, was actually what about the needs of your team members? Because some people are really well established in their organisation, they've been there a long time, they have that network that they can reach out to. But actually, if you're new to an organisation, you don't have that. And so you will be looking for your team members to support you. And yes, they can do it online, but actually, isn't it nice to do it in person as well? So that's what I'm seeing. Has anyone got anything that they'd like to share, or any questions that they like? Linda says, we've set up guiding principles that managers should use as we recognise one size doesn't fit all. Brilliant. Has anybody else come up with any challenges or areas where they've seen it work really, really well?
I can say the opposite.
Okay.
I think one of the things that's entirely being missed in this is the cultural norms and creation of organisations. And it's not just about the new staff, it's about those links between staff and how you make. Now, there are some organisations that naturally, I mean, there was the one that I can't remember, the conferencing organizer, the one who does conferencing software, and the guy who started it up doesn't even have a home, let alone a fixed office. So I get that in some businesses, but I think certainly for us, where a lot of our staff are very frontline, I think also in terms of community building I'm very, very biased, hence my slightly facetious comment earlier. But actually that's what I'm seeing in practice, is people doing what the hell they like. I think there's a major problem that's being missed in terms of that building culture, that actually, I mean, I've joked, it's a bit like a youth club sometimes on campus, because you've got lots of young people and no one over the age of about 22. And I think that there is a long-term problem that we are building up here, where remote is absolutely makes sense, but the balance has gone too far often the other way. Now, I understand if you live in London, if you want to avoid going into London every day, I get that. But I think the problem we've got is we need to look at individual organisations, what's best for the organisation, and not have a one-size-fits-all, let alone across in organisations. But, you know, this is what this university does, or this is what this company does. We should be doing the same thing.
Yeah, I completely and utterly agree. I think it is about working out what fits for your organisation, your culture, and your particular team. And we know that the Cubo members, what I've seen with my clients is that they have been in far more than the rest of the university, and therefore, well, we should do what the rest of the and there's always, isn't there, that battle. But actually we need to remember that we are there for our customers. And I think it is a real challenge for managers and leaders to really think about, if they have a frontline team, how their actions and behaviours and what messages that is sending out. Because I certainly know of one organisation that I used to work with, that the sort of senior manager within that section, and this was the housekeeping team, did not turn up on campus once during the first lockdown. And if I'm honest, I don't think that is appropriate leadership or management behaviour, and we have to look at that. So I think it is complicated, and I don't think that there is, you're right, Joe, there's no one size fits all. There's not you have to look at the nuances, and that's what good leadership is about self-reflecting on what's right for your organisation and your team, but also remembering that what might be right for you may not be right for your team. So as senior leaders, you may be comfortable presenting online and comfortable at picking up the non-verbal communication signs that a member of your team is struggling, things like that. But actually, managers that don't have your skills and experience may not be used to doing that. And therefore, you know, being in the room is really, really important.
Just one quick comment on that is that one of the real bonuses on that is where you can get frontline staff to take the time out is either you can record or remotely, because they're all in different sites, much easier to communicate. So some of those mass meeting type things are actually much more effective. So I'm not remotely against it. I think it's the right tools to the right thing. And I think that really helps. And so there's an element of that ability to do digitally, which is a significant improvement even for the frontline staff.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else have any other comments, thoughts, questions?
I was going to add, Mel, that I think it's important as well just to think about people's personal circumstances as well as much as possible, where the role doesn't require them to be there in person, they're not frontline, i.e. I always say comms and marketing staff, don't always need to be there frontline. If the individuals have got care needs or childcare needs, etc., then that works really well for them. For me personally, I'm happy to go into the office every day because it has no impact on me right now, but I would like that flexibility in the future if I was, to have children and vice versa. But at the same time, a caveat there is that you still got to be really careful with the odd few that I'm going to swear, take the piss, and there are a few that will if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And I think it's really important just to think about that, but try and, accommodate as many people as you can. And also think about people's personal well-being as well. That's really important because we all have those days where we wake up and think, I can't be bothered going in today. And actually, if it's all online meetings, then why do we need to? And it's nice to have those days sometimes, like I am, stay at home, but not every day. We've got to have that in-person presence. And I think people are more creative. I think we get more done, especially in big team meetings when we can see each other across the table or in the same room. So that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah,
I'll come in on James's point with regards to welfare. So we put a rota system in place. So I'm Sarah at Queen Mary University of London. We have a sales and an operations events team. And we put a rota in place for our team. We're a team of 7. And my first focus when we started the rota after lockdown coming back in, we were delivering on a hybrid model, so it was a blend of working from home and in office. But the focus for me for the rota was making sure that we had sales team in the office every day of the week. We had a presence Monday to Friday. But what that meant was, with 4 of us in the sales team, that actually one person would be in the office on their own on some days. And that is not welfare. That's not good. That means the team members sitting on their own. That's not engagement. That's presenteeism. So actually, I started reworking the rota to make sure that we had one touch point a week where we were all in on a Wednesday. We have a sales meeting. This is the sales team specifically. We have one touch point where we're all in, and then the other days of the week I make sure that at least 2 people are in together each time so that they can have that collaboration and that vital kind of those water cooler moments that you should have in the office to be able to work together and build a team. And what that meant was, for example, maybe sometimes on a Monday or maybe on a Friday there isn't a sales presence, but if we don't have any show rounds or site visits in, they can quite happily conduct their inquiries from home remotely. And so therefore we started to get a better blend and a better engagement from the team. Of course, it's harder for the ops team because they have to be in when the events are in, so then they kind of balance the rota around that. But that was interesting for me to learn how our rota system had to adapt, actually, from like learning on the job, learning as we went, as the situation evolved.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Sarah, because I think that actually we are learning. This is a brave new world, and we're not going to get it right all the time. And I think that that's really important as well. And being honest and upfront about that. Often as leaders, managers, we think we have to get it right. And we find it difficult to say, actually, that didn't go, but actually opening up that conversation. And certainly with the organizations I work with, and that's what they do, then they get a much better response, but also actually having some of those conversations before as well. So I know that with Jane and the team at UAL, we've done a lot around what were the lessons that we learnt during the pandemic, because I think as operators, and I am so in awe on what all of you have achieved and done, and the amount of change and everything that you've had to deal with and the resilience that's been. But what we often do as operators is we just keep going. We have a challenge, we deal with it, and we move on, and we don't ever step back and say, right, what do we need to celebrate what went well? And credit to Jane and the team, they actually took the time to stop, take a breath, and look at what went well, but also, what are the lessons that we could learn. I don't know whether you want to come in there, Jane, and say anything about what you did.
She's going to let me off as not saying anything, just. So it's Jane at UAL, and we did, and we did decide to do lessons learned in multiple sessions, actually. One was with my SMT, And then Carol took that through to administration and finance, because we just felt that it was such a significant event, COVID, and still is, that we really needed to touch base and think through what worked well, what didn't work well, what did we do that, this is Mel's favourite, by the way, what did we do that we would like to keep, what did we do that we want to get rid of, all that sort of stuff. And, you know, having Mel there to facilitate that for me is great, because once she frames the exercise, she always adds an element of fun, so that encourages people to open up. And also it allows people to be more honest than it would be if I was chairing the group, because people might be a little bit reticent to say one thing or another. I think the other thing for Mel was that she was able to delve deeper into things that were raised that maybe not have got raised at all. So the other thing it did was it got rid of a lot of the niggles in the room, and we from that put a plan together of what our hybrid working would look like. But we said that we would revisit that actually after Christmas, which we mustn't forget, Mel. And we have started doing that. So some of that was, my SMT said they wanted to meet in person once a month, and that they wanted occasional one-to-ones in person. So we were able to put all of those things in place. And I think what Mel said very briefly was, you know, retention's got to be one of our biggest drivers at the moment. Staffing is, you know, like gold dust. So what we don't need is team members who've worked through this pandemic with us, who we've spent lots of time and energy in terms of training and developing, to all walk out the door. So anything that I can do in order to keep my team, one, motivated, and two, with me, I will do it. So it was really useful. And Carol Thomas at a different level did it, and she found it incredibly useful. I think she got a lot of surprises out of her lessons learned session, but Mel would know more about that because I wasn't there.
Yeah, they did, and they said that, you know, in the past, when they sort of reviewed, and it is the approach that you take, they had reviewed what they'd done. It'd always been quite negative, because not necessarily when you're reviewing what you're doing, so often our preference is to go with what's wrong, and we forget to celebrate those bits that actually all the good stuff that we've done. And there's so much good stuff been taken across the board, and so working with Carol's team, they were able to do that. We took a very different approach, and it was a really, really beneficial session. Carol, you've got your hand up.
I have, yeah. Just to say hi, everyone. Nice to be on this call. It's good to reflect. And just following on from what Jane was saying about our lessons learned, I really do think it was a worthwhile lesson and a worthwhile exercise. And I would encourage everyone to, if you haven't had a chance to do that, to actually make time to actually look at how things have gone, because there is so much learning that's taken place as a result of the pandemic. And just in terms of some of the key things that came up for us, if you don't mind me just saying, Mel, just to share it. One of the things that came up was that the team really liked the mixture of working from home and working in the office. We put a rota together where we have, you do a minimum of 2 days. If you want to do more than that, that's entirely up to you, but it's 2 days in the office. And as a result, there's sometimes when the team can't make it, so they kind of like swap, they always make sure there's cover. And that's an ownership that they've taken on as well. So that's really good. The rota we have that's going. The other thing that was quite useful is the whole using technology in terms of communicating with students. And students, it comes naturally. So we have been looking at the how we communicate with students, and we're looking to develop more team meetings online with students as a result of the pandemic. The other thing that came up for us was looking at how we communicate with students, because we found that we had to refer to different tools, different websites to actually engage with students. So from the lessons learned, we thought that this is a really good place to actually make sure that the information we have is up to date, so that we can actually have these conversations with students and refer them to our website, which has always had to be changing because of all the different things that's happening with the pandemic. And also the other big learning for me during this time was recruiting during a pandemic, and how you actually embed new team members into a team which is established. And one of the things that came out for them, we had a buddying system, I had catch-ups with them, all kinds of things. But when it came to going back into the office, they were really keen. And that's one of the reasons why I was really keen to actually kind of like try and get this rota in place, because the team members, like what you were saying, Mel, they wanted to hear the conversations that other, you know, long-standing team members were having with students. They wanted to draw on that information, that knowledge as well. And it's this whole thing about connecting, you know, in person. It's different to connecting online. Not saying it doesn't have a place, but there's a difference. And you know, thinking about new people, new team members really helped in terms of trying to kind of like pull the team together and have a good rota as well.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Carol. And it was a really fun session. It was great.
Yeah.
It was really fun. We had a lot of fun that day.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think if you haven't done that, I would urge you to do that and go right through the organisation, so that everyone, your frontline teams, are a wealth of knowledge and ideas and creativity, and sometimes we forget to engage them. So that's something. And I think for me, when I look at my clients and from my time in universities, main reasons I left to start up my own business was because of the politics. And one of the things that I saw happen during the pandemic was actually that a lot of the politics and silo working, not just within estates and commercial services, but across the university, got put to one side, and actually resolving problems became the focus. You know, what are we going to do? And it brought everyone together in a way. So I think there's a point of doing it with your teams, but also, is there any way to influence that upwards as well? Because what was it that caused us, and how can we replicate that? Because I think that will make everybody's jobs much easier. And I know I loved my time when I was in a university, but it did feel sometimes like we were on a steamliner moving incredibly slowly. And so actually, if we can take some of that learning and look at how perhaps we can make things quicker, move things along quicker, as has been shown we have done during the pandemic, wouldn't that be a great place to be? So that's a bit of a challenge for you. How can you influence that upwards, and not just in your teams as well? And I think actually, let's go on to poll 2. So poll 2 question for you is, how have you seen the leadership in, oh, hang on a minute, let's go, right. How have you seen the leadership in your organisation change during the pandemic? It may not have changed at all. Has it improved? Has it got worse? So let's launch this, and you can cast your votes now. And when I'm talking about I'm talking the entire organisation, so not necessarily your team or your department, but okay, so we're almost there. Just one more person to cast their vote if they're going to. Okay, so if I share those results with you. So 50% of you have said that you've seen it improved, which is fantastic. 21% stayed the same and 29% got worse. They're quite interesting results, because the ILM and City of Guilds conducted a survey of 3,500 managers and leaders across the UK, and 75% of those respondents said that they thought that the leadership was lacking. Their leadership was lacking during the pandemic, particularly around those soft people skills. So engagement and motivation, empowerment and emotional intelligence as well. So actually you're bucking the trend. So I'd really love to hear from people that have, you know, especially those of you that said that you've seen leadership improve. Is anyone willing to share some examples of that? That would be really helpful. John, you've taken your...
Yeah, I suppose it's, when you talk about leadership, I mean, leadership's on lots of different levels, isn't it? Because you can have, you know, supervisory leadership, personal leadership. My example was actually the principal of the university who, you know, having worked in previous universities, he never saw the principal. But actually our principal is Queen Mary is very engaging. Even way back to April 2020 when London was, you know, very quiet, he'd be on campus, he'd walk the floor and, you know, he'd actually talk to you and look you in the eye and say, how are you? Which actually is really important, and actually listen to the answer. So that's why I said improved. I think the other element why it's improved because leadership is a lot more available, or you know, you can touch, you can be in touch with them a lot more easy. So it's scary now when someone senior rings you on Teams, you think, oh my God, you know, the restructure's happening or something scary, but no, it's just they're asking a question.
Yeah.
But having said that, there are examples where, you know, leadership hasn't improved, but you know, and especially that emotional intelligence piece, you know, it's just that pick up on the vibe in the room or asking that question on a Monday morning, not launching into how's the campus, but actually checking on people's welfare and, you know, how are people's weekends. So it is a mixed bag, but for me, my example is about the senior leadership at the university.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Thank you for sharing that. And I do think that is really important because in some ways the pandemic has created a bit of a paradox, which that in some ways our human connection has gone down, you know, in the room, that human connection has gone down. But in order to compensate for that, we need leaders and managers that have better people skills. And that for me is the area of greatest challenge with most leaders. All the work that I do is around the human part of leadership. It's not around goal setting. It's not around, you know, managing tasks. It's the people element of it. And I think that this is really interesting and it is a learning and it is a reflection of, you know, if you look at yourselves, your team, you know, prior to the pandemic, did they have the people skills that they needed? And now going forward, where there's even more emphasis on it, have they got them? Because it's a, you know, that human part of it is hard. There is no right or wrong in my book, but it is about that ability to self-reflect and keep learning and keep growing. So, Linda, I can see you've got your hand up. Would you like to come in?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Linda.
Sorry. Yes, and what we did at Wrexham Glyndŵr was, as an executive team, we, and this is where technology comes in, we found that we hold kind of a webinar every semester for staff. And whilst we used to do kind of briefing sessions on a particular theme when we were on campus, we find that the webinars now are much more well attended by people that probably would never have rocked up to the briefings previously. But we've committed to doing that as an executive team every semester. And the feedback we're getting from staff is that's, you know, been really, really beneficial in terms of staying in touch. And the other thing that has gone down really, really well with the team is that we've been giving kind of occasionally kind of what we've called health and well-being days. So we've actually given people an extra day off. So we're closing early. So we're finishing on Thursday, the 23rd of December, and giving everybody the 24th off as a thank you, really, for the work that everybody's, you know, contributed towards, really. And that does go down really well. So just wanted to share that.
That's interesting, Mel. Can I just jump in there?
Yes,
Because
of course.
the university has also given a wellbeing day on the 24th of December, which is great, but there's no thought given by the university's hierarchy that actually our staff have still got to work because the students don't go home. And it's also working in the reverse for the people who work in the department, one of the departments I look after, accommodation, because there's just no acknowledgement that actually they can't have that day off. And so I think it's a great offer to give a wellbeing day. They could have made it a positive for those that have to work by acknowledging the fact, we understand some of you will need to work. However, you know, I'm sure you can work with your line manager, but to say that Christmas Eve is off, and then we've had arguments with so many staff who said, well, no, it's off, we're off. It's like, no, you're not off, because we've actually got halls open full of students. So it's really poor messaging, in my opinion, from EB, which creates a negativity, which is unnecessary.
Can I add to that, Jane? I can make
You
it.
can, Joe.
I'm going to say it's actually even worse than that. When they gave us time off earlier in the year, all those people who'd been working through on the front line hadn't managed to take holiday, so were merely going to take the some extra days holiday to use some holiday. Whilst I am showing my prejudice, whereas those people who'd sat on their backsides at home, and I'm not aware that a lot of people at home work very hard, but I'm also aware that some people in some parts of universities may have had a lovely time for the last 18 months comparatively. Yes, they may have struggled for various reasons, but the workload wasn't the big problem. But that actually caused an additional problem because you couldn't even take the holiday. So you've got people going, well, so even though it created a division quite badly. And it's one of those common things that the institution forgets the front line.
Yeah.
Always.
So frustrating.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mel.
As I say, we are in fact Dobby the house elf. That's my description of facilities in general. You just have to accept it, and you know we live in Hogwarts.
Arno, you've got your hand up. Would you like to come in now?
Yes, Mel. Again, thank you. It's my first time to join a Cuba Roundtable talk. So again, happy to be here. Hi, Jane. Hi, everyone. I think in terms of leadership during lockdown, it's kind of lukewarm for me because right at the beginning of the lockdown, I think leadership got worse. And one of the reasons for that is because, well, I mean, I'm from Brunel in London. And at the start of lockdown, what we had was the senior management team of the university having this weekly meeting or webinar on Teams where they kept everybody informed as to what's happening and, you know, the plans going forward. But that was much more geared towards researchers and academic staff as opposed to support staff. So during those conversations, it was more about well, when is campus going to be safe for us to return? And they kind of forgot that there's some people that are currently on campus working. So that created a bigger divide, I think, between the self-support service, commercial and estate services, and the rest of the university. But one of the things that I think created more of a problem was leadership visibility. Because one thing that was common across the leadership team in the university, be it from commercial, estate, or the rest of the university, was that the leaders had that privilege to work from home. Meanwhile, the frontline staff had to come in on campus and put your lives at risks. So that was the key element. The second element that perhaps for me made leadership worse was because when the university came to rewarding the people, or perhaps rewarding people for their resilience during the lockdown period, everybody was rewarded equally, which means that there was no sort of appreciation almost, or those that worked during lockdown felt like they were not appreciated. But I think it's those two visibilities kind of improved with time because people now sort of hybrid working, most leaders have kind of learned their lessons and they're now on campus talking to their people more. But the reward aspect, I think, still remains.
Yeah. You bring up some big issues and I would love to say that I have the solutions to all of these or the answers. I mean, there is no doubt. I mean, I think we are all aware that actually working in universities, we can sometimes quite a lot of the time, I think, I certainly felt it at times, come up against that lack of understanding about how our teams work and what they need. The one thing I would say, and I think, John, you might want to come in from a Queen Mary point of view, is that I know that through the pandemic, the relationship the personal relationship how with the principal, but the understanding of what commercial services has done has been really positive. And I think that again, it's about understanding those successes, promoting them, but as the senior leaders within commercial services or wherever you might sit, is ensuring those messages go upwards as well, because they have short memories. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, John.
No, I agree. I think Ord have done some good stuff recently about promoting estates and facilities teams as well as commercial teams across with Heroes. It could have been even wider, I think. But I think certainly our university gets it in terms of how important frontline staff are. And, we did reward people directly for their efforts during COVID. And I think in terms of profile, it has massively improved. I think, having said that, that was a moment in time. I think we should use that platform to increase the importance of the commercial teams within the industry. Only this morning I had a session with HR, and I did actually say to them, you don't understand our business. And I think if you look at what's going on now in terms of the wider marketplace with recruitment, salary levels, work-life balance, there's still an enormous amount to do to get our teams on the right platform in terms of careers, career progression, terms and conditions. There's an awful long way to go. And, for example, I see Bath University, for example, are paying, £1,000 a person as onboarding just because of their recruitment challenges. So what I describe it as is an open door now to get that profile solidified in terms of how important we are to the university. And but that window is narrow in terms of its now. So things like setting up governance structures, which we've done here to have a commercial board, helps us in the long term. And I think people have got to build on those relationships in the senior echelons of the university, because it just proves that how important our teams are. And I think there is that double standard within universities, that those that have to come on campus, and as Joe says, those who have had an easier time. Not everyone, but sometimes a lot of people have had a lot easier time, to be honest.
Yeah. I think Joe's acknowledging that there has been a real appreciation, and I think there has, certainly amongst my university clients. And it's like, how can we as senior leaders manage that, and what do we need to do? That is part of our role, I think, very much. We are the spokesperson, and also Cubo can help with that as well. So there's a challenge for Sarah and Claire as they're on the call this morning as well. You're gonna love me. Okay, how are we doing for time? So we've got 10. I knew we were going to run out of time, because this is a topic that can just go on, and I really love everyone's input and the conversation. So I suppose these are two final tips from me in terms of leadership and leadership in the hybrid world, and one we've sort of talked about this morning, and Joe's been really upfront and honest about this, but it is about remembering that you have your own biases when it comes to hybrid work. And we talk about unconscious bias a lot in terms of EDI, but you will have it here as well. And you might have it one way or the other. You might quite like the way that it's working for you, but is that working for your teams and your customers? So that's one. But it's also thinking about, how do you feel about visibility. And when it comes to promotions, you know, visibility doesn't always equate to performance effectiveness. So just being aware of your own personal biases is one thing that I would urge you to do. And then we have just one, I have one final question for you. So let me launch this. What word should leaders try to use as little as possible? Why, yes, or but? Okay, 3 more people to cast their votes. Where are we going? Okay. 1 more person. Okay, so let me share the results. So in some ways, all these words, I mean, I know in the jobs that we do, yes is a word that we we need to say quite a bit. But actually sometimes not saying yes is helpful to ourselves, the well-being of our well-being, the well-being of our teams, but that isn't the word. Why is a very, very defensive word. The minute you say why to somebody, the heckles go up. So, you know, what prompted you to do this rather than why did you do this is probably useful. But actually you've nailed it. 71% of you nailed it, is but. And I think that we use this word so much in leadership, and particularly when we're thinking about retaining our staff, you know, and we go into appraisals and it's like, you're doing this really, really well, but you need to improve on this, but you need to work on that. And actually, but it's a massively powerful word. So whatever you say before you use the word but gets discounted. And so I would urge you to stop using but and use the word and, because it's not an either or situation. We're not one thing or the other, we're both. And my perspective of leadership, of human beings, is that we are all beautifully flawed. That's what we have to work with as leaders. We have to work with people that are beautifully flawed because we ourselves are beautifully flawed. So actually sitting somebody down in an appraisal and saying, do you know what, you do this really fantastically and we need to work on this area, is a really, really positive way to be. You know, we're a really high performing team and we're delivering against our targets and we need to do this. So that is my top tip, and that's where I'm going to bring my part of the session to a close, and to see if there's any more questions, comments, thoughts. I did have some other bits, but we're not going to get through those today, unfortunately, but maybe at another time. So I don't know whether anyone's got any thoughts or comments or questions.
I'd be just a quick one. I'd be interested in how people are balancing the in-person meetings against real. It's a genuine question. I mean, for example, we've gone monthly on, so on commercial services meetings, my internal meetings, we've gone one on and one off, one online, one in person. But I'm interested in how other people, in terms of whether people are doing one-to-ones, how people feel about the balance between that actual interaction. There's no right answer, but I'm genuinely interested in how other people are doing it.
So my SMT meet once a month in person, and then we have a weekly catch-up call. And that request came from the lessons learned, and the same for their one-to-ones. They wanted to have a one-to-one face-to-face on a monthly basis. However, some have said, can I have another one? If there's something particular that they want to talk about. So whilst it's in the diary once a month, it's flexible enough to, if they want a one-to-one, we can do that as well. Another one, we'll do that. So I do really believe that we have lost a lot of camaraderie, and we have also lost a lot of sharing of knowledge and learnings by working at home. And it's one of the things that came out of that lessons learned. The question is how we get that back in when you've got that hybrid situation, because it's difficult.
I think the difficulty is we haven't seen the end of this unwinding, actually. I think it's going to get worse as people. By the way, I will recommend a very short story, and I will say is The Machine Stops by Ian Forster, who wrote A Passage to India. It's about 20 pages. If you want to know what the future looks like, it's written in 1910 or something. It's unbelievable. The Machine Stops. Well worth reading. Get it online.
Who's it by? Sorry, Joe?
E.M. Forster, who wrote A Passage to India. It's a really enlightening. It's a dystopia, but if you want to see how bad it can get.
Oh no, don't! Sorry, Mel.
No, I love it. It's brilliant. I mean, I think for me, what's come out from my clients is that people really value that one-to-one. Personally, I believe that actually, in some ways, we could almost enhance, the development of our teams, but it takes a shift of mindset. So for me, actually, and I know that Jane and others have looked at this, is that sort of personal development has always been very ad hoc, but actually, as part of this, because people want that interaction, is that if there was a shift of mindset, you could have, a day or 2 days a month where everybody comes together. 1 month maybe is dealing with all the meetings and everything, but the other one could be around personal development, problem solving, those sort of things. But it takes a shift of mindset rather than doing what we've always done, because then we'll get what we've always got. We all know that quote, but actually I think that is a way to do it. It is because people want this interaction, and if you set it up right, you can use it to solve problems, but also to really develop these people skills that I think people need. The emotional intelligence, the ability. There was always that idea of we have a professional persona and a personal persona. And I have to say, I've never agreed with that. We are just one person. That, when I go into a coaching session with somebody, I deal with the whole person, not the part. And I think that hybrid working is going to bring that even more to the fore. We've got 2 hands up. Have we? Yeah, we have got time. So I'm not sure. I think, Arno, you were first, and then we'll go to Carol. Is that all right?
Sorry, I think that was my hand up since from the first time I spoke. I just have to take that down. My apologies.
Okay. All right. Carol. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Hi everyone again. It's me again. Just to agree with what you're saying, Mel. I do think that coming into contact with our colleagues, it's kind of like thinking about why we're doing it. So I try to, when I'm meeting the team, I try to kind of like change my working day in the office. I can see different members of my team. And I feel that it's like there's purpose. So there's one thing to go into the office to do our emails and to be available for students if they come in. But there also, I feel there has to be an added purpose. And I think that you've touched on that, the way how we use interacting with each other can change. It doesn't have to be what we used to do in the past. There's an opportunity to change things. I agree.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And I want to build on that.
Fantastic. Any other final comments, thoughts, questions? Okay, I think that's probably an appropriate place to say thank you very much. I hope that's been helpful and engaging. I've certainly enjoyed the discussion and the different perspectives. There's so much more that we could talk about, but unfortunately we've run out of time. So I think I'll hand back to Sarah now.
Well, thank you very much for that, Mel. It's a very, very interesting conversation. And I think there's definitely sort of potential to kind of carry it on further as time goes on as well, with things changing sort of day to day, it seems, at the moment. As I said, we have recorded today's session, so that will be on the website later on today. But thank you all for joining us this morning. It's been a really, really good call, and thanks to Mel for the informative session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.